afternoon, Friday. Happy Friday to everyone. And thank you for joining us one more time to DENTACHAT by Alluro. We've been doing this on and off in lockdowns, and obviously this lockdown is just a little bit longer, so we're taking advantage of it. And we have sometimes a great opportunity to have people from overseas. And this time we have a great opportunity to have an old friend, Aline, and when I say all, I mean because I know her for a long time. We try to provide topics that they're not only dental, right? So it's also business and add value to your business, because most of you will be a business owner, right? So thank you for supporting us. Next week, we're having another old friend, Miles, and we're talking about how is this new facial aesthetics is gonna work out in all this, lockdown and borders closed, etc. So just keep tuned. Anyway, Aline, thank you for joining us. Aline is specialized on communications, and she helps managers and to how to achieve together company objectives. There you go. and how do you get all together and read it, and great communication. And we all believe that dental practice communication is key, and we need to know how to tell them how to brush the teeth, and when they need to do this and need to do that. But these days that we're going to live with a COVID, going to the dentist, it might be a little bit unknown, and you don't have the certainty, and it's good to create that communication with your patients to actually allow them to feel safe when they're coming back to see you. So Aline, I'm going to pass it to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really, really, really happy to have you. If you guys have any questions, please put it on the chat. I'm going to interact with Aline. And, obviously Aline works with multiple industries, and she might be saying something that it might not apply completely to dental, but I will try to just drag it on this way. But if you guys have any ideas on the way, just put it in the chat and I will just pop in there. All right. So I'll put it to you, Aline. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thanks very much for that, Rudy. I'm just going to share my screen with everyone. Make sure that you can see that okay. Rudy, is that showing up okay? Everyone, thank you. Thumbs up. So first off, thanks very much for the invitation to come and speak to you guys today. It actually gave me the opportunity to really focus on some of the fundamentals of communication. Rudy did say, you guys are in this position of, you've got people coming in, they might have a whole heap of concerns. These are questions that they'll be asking that you'll still be trying to get your own head around. So it was a chance for me to think about what are some of the fundamentals of communication that will hopefully you'll be able to draw on now at work, but also at home. It's going to be a bit of a crash course. Each of the topics that I have put into this talk for the next 45 minutes or so, I could spend at least a day on each of those topics. So if it is something that you're interested in looking to do with your team at another stage, you're very welcome just to get in touch with me. My details are on the bottom of the slide, or otherwise, of course, Alluro knows where to find me. So it's what we're talking about today, as you'll have seen from the agenda. The four things that I thought we would cover is first off thinking about what emotional and logical language is, like what it sounds like, what it looks like. And the reason for that in particular is that emotions are pretty much running high. I don't know if you're experiencing the same thing yourself, but being in Auckland, as every day goes by, I notice that the people around me, my clients that I'm engaging with still over Zoom or Teams, they're starting to get more and more emotionally invested in what's going on for a variety of reasons. We find ourselves in a position where we're making decisions every single day. It's a daily decision. We don't have data stored back in our minds around, we've never lived through a pandemic before. Well, I haven't, I'm that young. But if we haven't lived through a pandemic before, we don't have any reference point about what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So everything seems to be pretty confusing. And what we know about humans is that if we're confused about things, it makes our problem solving skills take a bit of a nosedive. I wanted just to talk a little bit about that. I also thought I would touch on these 4 different communication styles, because it's not up to you really to work out, well, what style, how does my client like to communicate? But in all your communication, if you think about these 4 different styles, then you can at least accommodate all 4 styles. Or if you're not getting on with someone, if you find that you're at odds with someone, a very broad understanding of these 4 communication styles can really help you make sense of things. The third part is just asking the right questions. We'll just touch on this because, of course, when you're thinking about communications, it's a series of you ask me a question, I listen to you, right? So it's about questioning, responding, and listening. And I'd like to focus on, or like to get to the last part, those 4 listening styles, because it's something that when I came across, it really made a difference to how I listen. And particularly now, we think that communication is all about giving stuff out. It's not. Half of communication is about paying attention to someone to really understand where it is that they're coming from. So these are the things that we want to cover. The first one is around the tools that you've got around communication. The second one is around 4 different styles of communication. The third one is about engaging or getting someone to talk, which is about asking questions. And the fourth one is when they are talking, how do you listen? How do you listen? Right? So that's kind of the fundamentals, if you like, of communication. For some of you, this is not a new picture, as you can see, but I would like you to try and engage with me on this if you don't mind. So if you've got a notepad handy, or you might want to make a couple of notes. Can you see, when you look at this image, what do you see? And if you don't mind, just pop some comments into your chat function. I'll pull mine up so I can see what you're thinking, what your thinking is. When you look at this image, what do you see? I realize some of you on your phones, it might take a little while to write things down. Okay, so the image is well known for, there are 2 women in this picture, an old woman and a glamorous woman. Thanks, Tracy. Okay, so if you can't, sometimes it's easier to see the old woman. So this, if you're looking, this would be her nose, where my mouse is, her nose, her mouth, her chin, and she's got a big fluffy coat on, or a big hairy jacket. And if you were looking for the young woman, this is her face. This little bit here would be her nose. And this would be her hair and her headdress. So when you look at this image, there are 2 pictures that one might stand out for you more than what the other does. So now that you can see these 2 pictures, the next question is, what is their story? Like, what is the story of the young woman? Where do you think she's from? What has her life been like? What has her experience been like? And then you think the same for the old woman. What's her backstory? What do you think about her? So again, it's just something to keep in your mind. Rudy, are you happy to come off mute and tell me what your version of either of these stories is?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, so oops. Yep. It's funny because I'm in the room with Katrina, my colleague, and she saw the young lady first, and then I saw the older lady. But I mean, nobody has put any comments on the chat, but I'll tell you my story.
Thank you.
So the young lady, I think she's French, and she's young, and she got married very young, against her will, and she's very unhappy, but she has a lot of money.
Okay, cool. What about the old lady?
The old lady, she's been through a lot, and she's very proud of what she has achieved. She has a big family, lots of grandchildren, and I don't know, she's looked like Jewish, like I'm not Jewish, but it kind of reminds me of my grandmother. And it's like, she's happy to see all the kids there all together, and she lives comfortable now. And she's like, my job is done here.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Rudy. I put
No
you on
worries.
the spot there, but you gave brilliant descriptions. So the thing is what's happened is that there's no right nor wrong to this question, but what Rudy did was he went into his memory of experiences that he's had and has made a whole heap of assumptions about both of these characters in this image. He's thought about his beliefs have influenced his story, what he already believes to be the case. This experience, why French? Could be anything, right? But so there'll be some reason for his experience would have influenced his interpretation. The mood that he's in at the moment, so if I'd asked him this question and he was in a bad mood, he might have given me a very abrupt reply. But the mood he was in at the moment, he was quite happy to share the story and to elaborate. It also, that maybe the reason that he chose it was that she was French was because he's just watched a podcast that was in French, or someone walked into the office and said bonjour rather than g'day. So it could be, what recent information is sitting in his head. And another reason, of course, is the motivation. I put him on the spot. He could have said, I don't want to answer that question. Or he could have just jumped right in and said, oh, I'll give that a go and see what happens. So this is just a small snapshot of things which can influence our story. Now, the point of coming of reminding you about this is this point here that no two stories are the same. And this is really important for us to remember, particularly at this time. If we think about, there are a population out there who are really pro-vax, and there's a population out there that are really anti-vax, and of course you've got the people that sit in the middle. And the thing is that their backstory might be different to yours. But what happens is when we come into a space, we've got a different backstory. We believe that our backstory is the reality, and that gets us into trouble. So when you're in a customer facing role, which you all are, whether it's your colleagues or your clients, your suppliers, if they have a different story to us, it's just for us to remember that our story is not right. Neither is their story right. Our story is just our story based on our assumptions, beliefs, our experience, mood, recent information, motivation, plus a whole heap of other things. And once we remember this or keep it in mind, what happens is it allows us to be less judgmental and more tolerant of people who have alternative perspectives to us. And if ever there was a time to be less judgmental and more tolerant of difference, this is pretty much it. We're going to find that, as our frustration builds with being in lockdown, with losing money, with having to continuously sanitize all your equipment over and over and over again, as the frustration builds, our story is more real. And because we live in different worlds or different contexts, if you like, there is space for multiple stories, and we need to sort of create that at the same time. Yeah. This is a little exercise that you can do, and I always encourage employers to do it. You can do this little exercise with your colleagues, you can do it with your family, and just as a reminder of, let's make space for alternative views. Let's try and work with alternative perspectives as much as possibly can, rather than pushing some out and becoming distant to people where we don't necessarily need to. So if you think about where these stories come from, they come from our brain, of course. Every part of communication it comes from here. And I just wanted to share this with you because Dr. Steve Peters gives a description of the brain in a way that I really enjoy using. He separates it out into three separate parts: the computer, the chimp, and the human. And so the stories, if you imagine, would come from our computer, right? Every experience that we've ever had is programmed into our mind. So when we need to remember something or we're trying to problem solve, we go back into our computer, into our own personal Google, if you like, and have a look for what data already exists. And using this data that already exists, I'm going to solve this particular problem. So all of our habits, our habitual way of working, comes from this part of the brain that he calls the computer. But then you have it, and why this is relevant for you is to think about what is your instinctive way of responding to someone who is grumpy? What is your instinctive way of responding to someone who has an alternative perspective to you? What is your instinctive way of dealing with clients? Because if we always use the same programs that we've always used, we'll know that eventually they're going to, as we know with any computer, you've always got to upgrade it because eventually it becomes slow, it becomes cumbersome, and we end up wanting to get something new. For your own practice, if you don't continuously upgrade how you communicate your services, your attitudes, and your beliefs, eventually your clients will say, this computer is old, meaning yourselves, your practice, and I'm going to go and find one that's more efficient, more update, more inclusive, etc. So we're always looking at putting new programs into our minds. And certainly, if anything that COVID has taught us, it's exactly that. How do I keep putting new stuff? What are these new experiences that I'm having? And what am I telling myself about them? What messages am I programming into my computer? All the things that we program comes from the limbic brain, which is Steve Peters calls the chimp. So this is our emotional center, and pretty much everything, all of our behavior comes from our chimp. So, and I'll give you an example. So about, I think it was about 10 years ago now, I should know. My father had a vaccination, a flu vax, and I don't know, sometime during the day, and at 11 o'clock that night he was dead. And so it is possible for me to think, oh my gosh, because of this vaccination, my father is now dead, and I would program that feeling into my computer, into my memory. So if you're asking me to have a vaccination now, I might say absolutely not, because they kill people. The other thing is that, and that's one alternative, one approach. The other thing is and the reason I would program that is because the loss of my father was devastating, right? So my chimp, my emotional brain was activated, and it was looking for some reason to blame this event on. So I'm going to blame it on the jab. However, my human brain, which is the part that's responsible, so this is the frontal lobe, it's responsible for our logic, rational thinking. My chimp engaged my human brain, and my human brain said that, your dad had a triple bypass. He'd had a heart attack. He'd had a triple bypass surgery 6 months later. 6 months after that, he's lived for another 3.5 years, and that his death was a cardiovascular death, and it couldn't have been avoided, and so it had nothing to do with the jab. And so that's an alternative approach or an alternative belief that I could have programmed into my computer. So you can see that there is an event, and our interpretation, how we feel about that event and the messages that we associate with it, we program into our attitudes and our beliefs. And so in my case, it was the heart attack, and that I programmed in. So I ended up not being anti-vax. But I share this with you just so that we have this appreciation that all the programs that we have in our minds, the beliefs, the attitudes, they all come from a place, and they're all associated with a pretty strong feeling. So if you have clients or colleagues who have a strong feeling about the environment that we're in now, the rules that are in front of us that are changing every single day, the changes in policies, the changes in your work practice, if you've got colleagues who have a very strong feeling around it, it's just to have that understanding that they always come from a place and that they're emotionally driven. So the chimp is where our behavior comes from, but the human brain, where our logic and reasoning comes from, is where purposeful communication comes from. And this is really the space that you need to be in to help navigate all these changes that are bombarding us all the time. Change and uncertainty is the things that we hate the most. How you can use this in your practice, there are some TED Talks. Steve Peters has got a number of TED Talks. There's YouTube clips. There's a whole variety of stuff that you know on the chimp paradox. And of course, there's a book if you're interested. It's introducing this tool in the way that I just have to your team is hugely helpful. If you find that you're dealing with a particularly difficult client or someone who's highly emotional, it's almost being able to visualize, oh, that's their chimp. Their chimp is sad, their chimp is frightened, their chimp is angry, their chimp is frustrated, their chimp is happy, whatever the emotion is, right? So you can visualize, this isn't this person, this is this person's chimp. The emotional center of the brain has been activated, and that is causing this behavior. So once we appreciate that, then we talk the language of chimp. And when it comes to listening, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the language of chimp is empathy and understanding. Often what we do is if our chimp is activated, if I'm really frustrated with something, somebody else will try and calm me down because we don't like to see people's angry chimps. I think, well, I want to calm that chimp down. So we engage our human brain with logic and rational thought to say, calm down. I've got this. I'll sort it out. Think about this logically. That's the worst thing that you can do to talking to a chimp because it negates how they're actually feeling, right? Until you address how the chimp is feeling, all logic and rational thought goes out the window. So it's important to understand which part of the brain is talking and engage in that part first. Once the chimp has calmed down, then you can have a human brain conversation. Yeah. And you'll know yourself if you've ever tried to argue with an angry person, good luck. Right? You can never win against an angry person because you're talking human and they're talking chimp. It's fundamentally two different languages. As I'm going through this, I'm mindful that I'm racing. If you've got any questions or thoughts or you're not sure, just throw them into the chat and I'm very happy to come back to it. So the reason why I put this up is two things. Again, it's to be mindful of if you're going to try and resolve conflict, if you're going to try and make your clients feel reassured or better, if they're fearful and you want to give them the security, you need to be able to talk the language of chimp. Okay. So I want to move on to the next part. And the next part is around these 4 different communication styles. So there are a number of models, and what I'm going to show you is probably a combination of a variety of different models that I've sort of thrown together. And I've done this because it's a wider audience. I wanted to try and be a bit more inclusive in that area. But when you're trying to understand about how to connect with people, it's useful to know about the 4 different ways that people tend to think and tend to speak. And if you haven't already, get a piece of paper and draw this up as we go through, because if you go through the process of drawing it up, it'll be really easy for you to explain to somebody else and to remember in the heat of the moment when you need to. So it's these 2 dimensions, how we think and how we speak. So we'll start off with our thinking style. Some people like to think first in terms of facts, and others, however, think first in terms of feelings. So factual orientation people are always interested in what's the data, what's the outcome, what are we working towards here? Don't waffle, get to the point. People who are more feeling orientated, they'll walk in and they'll tend to ask questions like, and how are you? And how's things going? They might be more expressive, or, they'll have this very considerate, compassionate look. You might find that they're good listeners or they're good talkers. They're people, right? So at the top, in terms of a thinking style, there are some people who like to and get reassurance from working with data and outcomes. And there are other people who get reassurance working through relationships, how we feel about things and how we feel in this particular environment. Now, there's no better way to be. There again, there's just this appreciation of this difference. So that's thinking style. The speaking style is you find that some people have quite a direct speaking style If you haven't already picked it up, my accent has a tinge of South African to it. I spent 14 years there growing up. And the South Africans, as you may know, have quite a direct speaking style. I would say that for New Zealanders, just in comparison, would have sometimes a more indirect speaking style. And again, there's no right nor wrong. People with a direct speaking style, they know what's on their mind and they let you know, oh, I think you should do this, or you should do that, or, oh, in my opinion. So it tends to speak first and then think. People with an indirect speaking style are more cautious about what it is they want to say. They'll either think about it first or they'll wait for their turn to say it. They don't want to be abrupt. They want to come across as rude. And so they might tend to take longer to speak. And they might also use a lot more words. So again, not right nor wrong, just different. But if we have an indirect speaking style and we're speaking to someone who's direct, it can drive us crazy because the direct person says, just get to the point. And the indirect person might say, oh, I don't want to be rude. So again, it's having this tolerance and acceptance of, of both, but being able to pick, identify it. So quite simply, even if you just had the screenshot of what's on the screen at the moment, even if you just drew that up, that would give you enough to work on about how does this person communicate? Are they direct or not? Are they talking about the facts and outcomes, or are they talking about relationships and looking for reassurance? What are they doing? And then once you can work that out, then it's quite easy to give them what it is that they need. And let's just go through the 4 different styles. There are multiple names. I have just called them what you'll see on the screen, but there are a variety of other options. And I'd be interested to know if any of you have done this before, to put these options, your other programs or names in the chat. I'm interested to see what other ones you've come up with. In this case, we've got the red and it's called the doer. Just have a read through about the traits of someone in this area. This is someone who gets stuff done, so they're pretty driven and they're thinking around, okay, what's next, what's next, what's next? And they're brilliant to have on your team because they'll keep things moving. Yeah, they'll keep things moving. Might not overthink things, just get the stuff done. Factually orientated. So if you have a client, for example, who comes into your practice and you were thinking, oh, how do I know if they're a doer or not? You'll know. They'll be confident. They'll walk in. Hello, it's Arlene Nicholson. My appointment's at 3 o'clock. I'll take a seat over there. They'll be in charge, right? They know what's going on. They'll give you quite direct eye contact. They won't necessarily stutter and stumble over their words. They might not worry too much if you're still busy on the phone because they'll be there demanding your attention, right? And if you're late, they'll look at their watch and be a little bit disappointed in that. So you can tend to see them from the moment that they walk into the practice. On the other side, you have a thinker. So again, this is just a word that I've picked up from one of the models. So the thinker is orderly, likes systems, is a critical thinker, likes accuracy, thoroughness, they're analytical, tend to be more reserved and thoughtful, and those are characteristics of an indirect speaking style. Pride themselves on being logical, and they're curious. The thing about thinkers is that they'll always be looking for more information. So for these clients, you might need to give them time to think and to process. So you might say, in terms of our safety protocols, here is an information sheet. While you're waiting for the dentist, you might like to have a sit down and have a look through. And if you've got any questions after that, please let me know. The thinker is the type of person who will read this information sheet and go through it. And if they do have any questions, think about it, they will come and ask. But they tend to take a little bit more time. You'll find because of an indirect speaking style, they're a little bit quieter, a little bit more reserved. You might be speaking to them and you can see their brains working, thinking about what they know. You absolutely can't pull the wool over their eyes. They like the facts. They like you to be thorough and accurate. They'll be looking for your if you say that you're really looking from a health and safety perspective, they'll be looking at all the systems that you've got in place. They'll be deciding, are these systems logical? Does this work for us or doesn't it work? They'll be thinking, is there a better way that you, or a more efficient way that you could be doing this? Yeah, so that would be the thinker. And then we have a friend. So again, with an indirect speaking style, this is what they share with a thinker. Have a look at the characteristics of the friend. So the friend is someone who is more feeling orientated but indirect. They're usually very good listeners. They'll be happy for you to tell their story, but they'll take a back seat. So you'll find that when they come into your practice, they're usually smiling. They'll wait for you to finish on the phone, or they'll wait for you to have a conversation. They might not complain, finish a conversation with another client or with a colleague. They might not complain if you're running late. They might provide excuses for you for being late, or for not having the equipment that you might need, or for an interruption. They're kind, they're considerate, and they tend to be patient. So again, non-demanding. Because they're feeling orientated, what they'll be looking for from you is reassurance and making sure that we're okay, in this space. They'll want to know that you're okay. Likewise, you'll want to make sure that they're okay. So in terms of what their chimp needs, their emotional brain, it's comfort, confidence, reassurance, but not in your face. If you are too direct, if you're just all about facts and things, if they're not feeling that you care about them, you run the risk of being a little bit perhaps on the back foot. Okay, so when a friend comes into the practice, take time, be really mindful of your body language, your facial expression, be really mindful of all of that, so that you make those connections, those emotional connections, before they sit down. So we've got the doer, thinker, friend, and we've got the actor. And again, this might not be the best word. However, the actor, you can see the description of the actor on the screen. So you'll find that in your practice, the actor will walk in, oh my gosh, where is the parking? There's no parking around here. Do you know the trouble that I've had getting into this practice? Oh my gosh, you guys have moved. This place is so awesome. I can't, and you'll just hear them as they walk in. They're expressive, they use their body language. You'll notice in their clothes, they might be a bit more flamboyant, or the clothes might be very current. They're the ones that lead the trends, that they're quite confident, they're happy to engage with you because they're feeling orientated. They kind of wear their heart on their sleeve. And you know it, they're a heap of fun to be around. They've got good humor. They like you to laugh with them. They like to crack jokes. They are spontaneous. They're creative, but also, of course, they can be quite easily distracted. And so they're interesting people to be around. And likewise, they want the same from you. So if you see an actor coming into your practice, you'll probably know, because you'll feel the energy. Even when they're grumpy, they're energetic to be around, and we all feed from this, from this energy. If they've had a bad day, they can tell you a story in such a fun way that you'll end up laughing. You end up laughing about it. They're also quite optimistic. They are optimistic. So if you had a conversation with an actor to say, oh, this COVID, isn't it terrible? Oh, aren't you over it? They're already bored. Yeah, that's not what they're after. One of the other models talks about them being sunshine yellow, and that's kind of how they are, the sunshine yellow. So again, if you see someone walking into the practice and you're in a bad mood, you need to moderate your mood to be sunshine yellow, or to be engaging or interesting. One of the strategies around engaging with an actor is always ask them about themselves, because they will be very happy to tell you all about that. So this is just a very, very brief look at these 4 different styles. If you want, and you can do this now, in the middle of this, it's important for us to remember that you or your clients are not one of these. It's not about putting people into a box. We are actually a combination of all 4. And it's really important to remember this. As a combination of all 4, then you have to think, well, which one is my dominant one? Which one do I tend to lead with? Which one is my client leading with now? So for example, my dominant one might be a thinker, which is blue. So when I'm calm, my thinker kicks in. Or in a crisis, my thinker might also kick in. But if I'm under pressure, my doer might need to kick in because I've got deadlines and I've got someone on my case, so I need to get things done. So we're a combination of all 4. So what you can do on your own if you want, imagine like right here in the middle is a 0. And if you go out to the 10s on either side, give yourself a score from 1 to 10 in each of these 4 different areas. Just to give you an example, if I was to put one together, this is a pretty ugly picture, I know, but this is sort of what you would end up looking like. I'd get an idea that you're, in this case, the thinker is the dominant style, then followed by actor, then followed by friend, and then by doer. And what this would tell me is that my default position is mostly to behave like a thinker. And what I need to pay attention to is the doer, because this would be my Achilles heel. In what instances do I need to bring my doer to the front more than just relying on my thinker? So I'll leave those up for a moment just while you have a look and see which you think is your dominant style. Create your own picture. And if you're able to on chat, I'd be quite interested to see, and you just need to put your dominant style in, what it happens to be. Rudy, what would your dominant style be? I need to come off chat. Mute if you like.
Hello. Hold on. I was just in a live scene, and I don't think this is a fair question, Elaine, because it's someone
Sorry, Rudy.
there.
Okay. Well, if anybody knows Rudy, why don't we do this? If anyone knows Rudy that's online, I think that's a much more interesting question. If you had to pick one, what would it be for Rudy?
But I will say that I maybe, I mean, just for the people in the room, suggesting that I'll be the actor more, because I'm a salesperson. But regardless, I agree or disagree.
Rudy's actually 13 out of 10 for actor.
Yeah, doer and actor. Okay, well, Tracy has agreed, doer and actor. And again, it's important to know with this, and I haven't got time to go into it too much. However, thank you for engaging on chat, as people who are. It's not about just what your main one is. It's also thinking about what is the second one, right? Because all of us have a different makeup. So an actor doer is quite different to an actor friend, which again is quite different to an actor thinker. Yeah, so they're quite different. So it's not just about being in a box. But the way to use this, and again, if you draw this up very broadly and you show this to your clients, it just helps them have a think about, okay, well, there are these 4 different ways that my clients like, and my colleagues and family members like to communicate. What do they need from me? To engage more collaboratively and more fully, to make real connections with people. What is it that they need from me in this moment? So, and therein comes this framework that you can draw up if you want. And it's an exercise that you can do with your team if you like, with the doers. So what would the doer need from you? If you think back to the behaviors, they want you to get on with it. They want you to talk about outcomes. A doer will be interested in knowing, what has this practice done to make sure I'm safe? So just give them what it is that they need. Yeah. The thinker, what does the thinker need from you? The thinker needs the data, or would like to have the data, and they want it to be thorough. They might need some time to have a think about it. They might need you to be available for further questions when they've decided what their questions actually are. They want you to slow the pace down a little bit. Yeah. And they want to make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row, because they're really critical, they will spot the errors. What does your friend need from you? So the friend needs to know how are you feeling, and are you okay, and how is this impacting you? They'll want to engage and have for you to tell them your story. You find that the friend is often the one doing the listening, and you might be the one doing the talking. But always make sure that you check in with the friend, like you throw those questions back. Yeah. And the actor, of course, the brilliant thing about the actor is that they'll tell you what they're thinking and what they're feeling and what you should do and you shouldn't do, because they wear their heart on their sleeve. So what the actor needs from you is give them the information, just stuff that they really need, that they've asked for. Keep all the details to yourself. If they want the details, they'll certainly ask you for them. So those are some of the things just to keep in mind when it comes to that. So that was a crash course on the communication styles. Now I want to move over to listening. And there's this image here, you can Google it yourself. I really liked it. If any of you are Chinese in the audience, you might be familiar with it. This is a combination of 4 words: ears, mind, eyes, and heart. And you put these 4 words together, it forms the word listening. And I liked it because at the moment, when we are thinking about how we communicate, we're doing a lot of talking, but how much listening are we really doing? And it's what are we listening out for? So when we put these 4 things together, and we keep this in mind, it will help us potentially listen more effectively. So the ears obviously receive the sound. The sound has to be processed through the filters in our mind. Our eyes are looking for the context in this, for the sound, and our heart is part of, yes, it's around empathy, but also in our heart it's around stopping what we're doing and being generous with our time by actually stopping and listening to somebody else. So you put these 4 things together and you get effective listening. So again, for some of you, there's a questionnaire, and I'm happy to send it to you if you like, but I just thought we would do a couple together. What I'd like you to do is read what's on the screen. So somebody has said this to you. Now on the screen, there are 4 different options or ways that you could respond. Not what should you do, what are you most likely to do? Okay, hoping that you have all had a chance to look at that. So here's the second one. Have a look at the blue that's on the screen. And then there's 4 different options. Pick the option that you think is what you would most likely, how you would most likely respond. Okay, so just keep those 2 responses in mind. There are 4 different types of listening styles that I wanted to pull out. Excuse me. So one of them is a critical thinker, or the critical listener, where you tell the speaker what you think about their action or the situation. You judge their past actions. The second one, or another one, is someone who keeps asking for information. And this is useful to clarify what the speaker means and checking that you've understood. Another style is a recommendation listening style. And this is where you tell the speaker what you would do in this situation or what you think they should do. And the last one is the empathetic listening style, which is standing in the shoes of the speaker, trying to appreciate what it feels like from their perspective. So if I put these together, it spells the word care, which I only found that out last night when I was putting it all together, but I think it's quite handy because if you're trying to think about, oh, what are those 4 listening styles? I listen because I care, and that might help you remember what these 4 styles are. Okay, There is also a place for each of these 4 styles, but again, it's the right type of listening for the specific context that you're in. So we'll go back to the 4 style. We'll go back to the scenario. So this was scenario number 1. Okay, Rudy and Mark, are you in the same building together?
I am. Mark is not here.
Okay, so I don't want to put you on the spot, Rudy, but you and somebody else can help out with the question.
Yeah, sure.
First listening style, why are you making mistake? So recommend, critique, ask, or empathize. What do you reckon?
I will reckon the last one. What do you know, that will be my first.
Okay, so number 1, why are you making mistakes? Are you recommending, critiquing, asking?
Oh, sorry. Gotcha. Okay. Why are you making mistakes? I'll be critic, I think.
Okay. What about number asking for more
So
information?
number 2, it must be scary to someone else. I'll be empathize, maybe.
Well done.
And then perhaps John has a good reason. Oh, I don't know. That sounds like a criticize. And then they recommend.
Well done. Okay, well done. So when you see it like that, and again, you'll know how you would normally answer it, but you think, oh gosh, did he ask for your recommendation? Did he ask you to be judgmental or not? And certainly, or did he just want you to empathize, right? Was he just getting it off his chest? So when you think about going back to our chimp and human brains and our computer, right? If you go back to that, thank you, Rudy. I don't know what to do next. I keep on making little mistakes, and I know my supervisor's hacked off with me. He's already told me off twice already today. You can tell that that's someone's chimp who's talking, right? And so when a chimp is talking, it's a language of empathy is what we need. Must be really scary to have someone tell you off like that. Yeah, it is. Because when we respond in an empathetic way, what that sends a signal to their chimp, you're feeling heard. And when we feel heard, it calms the chimp down. All right, so this is the second scenario. Ruby's gone off. Rudy's gone off. All right, so I wouldn't let anyone treat me that way. Do you want to have another go, Rudy?
Do I have a choice?
You do, you do.
Okay, let me just see. Right, so I recommend the first one. I wouldn't let anyone treat me like that. Will be critique. Yeah, okay. What kind of mistakes do you find yourself fixing up? That's asked, and you should get out the job and find one to treat. That's recommend. And then the last one, empathize. Yeah.
Empathize. Well done. Thank you for being put on the spot there. You did a sterling job. Okay. So again, this is just a simple exercise to bring your attention to our natural way of responding. So if you pay attention to all the conversations that you have over the course of the day, and we're coming into the weekend, when people are talking about their problems or their issues or the concerns that they've got, how do you naturally respond? Do they want your criticism? Do they want you to be on a pedestal and tell them, oh, I would never do that, or I'm better than you because I've got this stuff sorted? Do you want to make them feel worse than they already do? Have they asked you for a recommendation, or have you just provided it? And one of the things that we find more difficult to do is the empathetic type listening style. So Rudy, if you wanted to for extra points, there is one of those 4 communication styles which is better at empathetic listening than others. But for those of you who are online, you might know that it is the friend. Yeah, the doer, actor, thinker, friend. So it would be the friend who are pretty much who are good, who are good at doing that. So that really brings me to to the end. It's been a big rush and to get through some of those concepts, but I think if I was to summarize it as what I thought is useful for us to remember, all perspectives have a valid story. So while we're in this space of uncertainty, emotions are high, people are being stretched from all sorts of reasons, for all sorts of reasons. All perspectives have a valid story, and in-house fighting between colleagues, between your suppliers, with your clients, is going to happen. If it's not already happening, it feels to me like it's going to happen. So you can either jump in on that or try and stand back to say all perspective have a valid story. It's not necessarily my story, but it also doesn't mean to necessarily say that it's wrong. The second point is the chimp drives our behavior. So again, over the course of the weekend, if you're mindful about triggers that are making you emotional, and then know that when you're acting on that emotion, you're not engaging your logical brain. Our problem solving, our ability to think clearly is compromised when our chimp's in charge. And so if you want to try and engage your human brain, you need to find messages to reassure your chimp. Yeah. When the chimp's active, it's harder for us to recall information or data that is usually accessible to us when our chimp is actually calm. So keep in mind, if a client comes into your work or a staff member comes in and they're wound up, the first priority is to try and work out what's activated their chimp, to try and reassure the chimp so that they can engage in logical, rational problem solving. They usually sort stuff out themselves. The third point is to learn to speak the language of all four styles as much as you can, not necessarily one or the other. But in your practice, you'll find that there will be people who will be dominant as thinker, actor, doer, or friend. You'll find that they will tell you how they like you to speak to them. So you can do a course, absolutely. I would like it if you did, but they'll tell you how to speak to them. And then you just apply the same thinking to your clients. And the last part is pay attention to how you listen. I think this is, there's very few training programs that are just focused on listening, and I think that's a gap. Yeah, because listening is absolutely massive. If you can change your listening style to be more fit for purpose or to suit the context, it can really help make better connections with people's chimps, which is obviously what's pretty critical. So that was everything from me. I don't see any comments in chat, but I don't know if anyone wants to take themselves off mute and ask any questions or
thank
not.
Thank you very much, Aline. There's no questions on there, and people can't unmute, unfortunately, so they have to put it on the chat.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you. It was pretty fun and interesting for a Friday afternoon. I think many people, not only in DENTACHAT, but on the whole country, will much rather listen to you at 1 o'clock than somebody else. So thank you for that. And attendees, I put the CPD number there. So CPD number is 504325, and it's written on the chat there. And I'll if you guys want to copy it into it. If you have any other questions, or you want further information about it, please let us know. Let Aline know. Also remind you guys that all the DENTACHAT that we have had, they are on our website, naluro.co.nz. There is a section called Business Builder, or something about build your business. And all the videos and training is there. So you guys can come and check it out if you have any other question. And yeah, well, thank you so much. And Aline, it's been pretty fun, and it's been, had a good time on a Friday. And it's always quite nice to, hang out and do something and work together. So thank you for that.
I think from my perspective, thanks everyone for coming along. An hour on a Friday afternoon is a big deal. So thank you for that, and thank you for Rudy for playing the game with me, and for the invitation.
That's all right. Yeah, thank you. See you guys, and I'll see you guys next week. We send in the invitation later on today to plan in same time next Friday, 1 o'clock for official aesthetics with Miles. Okay, see you guys.